It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome into another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders. Alan, are we even able to say afternoon for this episode?
We're going to call it an evening drive today, okay?
Steelers evening drive. You can see there's a third person on the screen. Donny Chedrick, Donny Football, the wing guy, Icy Light Mango guy, whatever you want to call him. 93.7 The Fan. Donny, what's going on, pal?
Nothing much, guys. Thanks for having me. I've been checking out some of your stuff really as the Steelers season went on. I know we always converse a lot on Twitter and social media, so I appreciate you guys having me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I do want to clear the air before we get into this. I need you to let Andrew Filipponi know that I do not hate him. All right. When there was conversation, when you guys were talking about the whole Broderick Jones situation, tweet came up. He said, "Is that the guy that hates me?" I want to clear the air. I need you to relay the message to Pony that I do not hate him.
Will do. I think those guys kind of just assume that's how everybody the populace normally feels. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And also,
I hate him. You can tell that I hate him. I want to beat his.
Alan, Donnie and I got lumped in together a lot because the husky guy with a beard is exactly how Donnie put it on the show.
That's why we had to bring guests in this week to keep our beard quota back at 2 after you ridiculously, but apparently successfully.
We got another comment on yesterday's episode.
I know we did. The people like
is that all for the Arthur Smith look?
It is 100%. My mom, I walked upstairs the first day that I did it, and my mom was like, "Okay, what's this about?" And I was like, "Oh, don't worry. The Steelers just hired Arthur Smith." And then she just acted like it was normal that I shaved my beard just because of the Steelers offensive coordinator hire. So we're here.
If I did that, I'd be a single man again.
I remember when my daughter was very young, I shaved and she freaked out. She started crying because she didn't it was like my face melted off to her. Like a piece of me was gone. She didn't know how to respond.
Yeah, absolutely. What are we almost 3 minutes into this thing? Nothing yet said about football.
Talking about football.
Yeah. So
with Mr. Football, can I call you Mr. Football? Is that how that works?
No, you don't have to do that. Just call me Donnie.
That's his father.
Yeah. Mr. Football is my
dad. Donnie, I'm interested to get your take on this, and I'm sure that the airwaves have heard your take on this. But Art Rooney talking about the quarterback situation, talking about a trade being unlikely. The name most linked to the Steelers when it comes to trade talk has been Justin Fields. Primarily because Chicago, #1 overall pick, Caleb Williams right there at the top for them to take and kind of restart the clock with that QB contract of Caleb Williams, considered a generational talent by many. Justin Fields, first off, would he even make sense for the Steelers? Does he make more sense now in an Arthur Smith offense? And 2, do you have any interest in trading assets to get a guy that you're going to have to pretty much give a second contract to in the very near future?
I think you kind of hope with this that you don't get caught up in a bidding war with multiple teams. Although, it could end up being that, even though with Justin Fields, it's just a huge case of untapped potential. You look at the numbers, you look at what he's done in Chicago, and people will just steer clear of that based on what they see. But then sometimes you see how electric the dude could be, and it's like, okay, you put that guy around the right people, then you might have something there. I think they should be open to all options this offseason. I'm not saying to throw several picks their way or get ready to pay this guy big money. I think if it's in the realm of I've seen a few things that have gotten thrown out there. I know Schefter mentioned a first round pick, but I think sometimes whenever Schefter throws things out, it's kind of just to do a favor to somebody in the business. He's just doing the Bears a favor there by saying that it warrants a first round pick is what I think. But if it's their second, or I don't know, a third or fourth in a player, I honestly think it's worth going for because you're getting a quarterback who is still younger than Kenny Pickett. And even though the win-loss record doesn't look good, I understand that. And I know that it normally gets held on to a little bit more with Pickett just because of the downfall of some of his other numbers. But I think a lower asking price, like low buy on the guy, possible high reward, I think that's what you could get with Fields. I mean, but then again, if you get into some sort of war with somebody else, you got to really set your limit in how much you're willing to give away.
Yeah, I think it's hard for me to see how it fits for the Steelers as a team with just like a bunch of needs besides quarterback. You know, I think if they really want to go address the quarterback position in like a big, like, hey, let's just fix this kind of way, I think it's easier to envision them finding the cap space to do something with Kirk Cousins or Baker Mayfield than trading like first or second round picks. We know what Omar Khan and Andy Waddle want to do, right? They want to rebuild this offensive line. And I'm sitting there watching Mike Tomlin in Mobile, like hawking the linemen all week. And like, I just can't imagine that this team is not going to go out there and with a really deep tackle draft class, got 3 or 4 really good centers. It just seems like everything's lined up perfectly for them to fix this offensive line. And like, that's what they really want to do. And so I don't know. It just doesn't feel real. I don't think it would be a bad idea. It just doesn't feel realistic to me. It doesn't feel like something the team really has any. No. It doesn't seem to line up with the plan that they've been putting forward for this team. Like if you want to go get Justin Fields, I don't know that Arthur Smith is the coordinator I want either. Like he's no quarterback whisperer. How is he going to be the guy that is going to maximize the potential out of a quarterback that does have high potential but has never reached it? I mean, I would have wanted Zach Robinson if I was going down that road, right? And not Arthur Smith. It doesn't seem like it fits the pattern of their behavior.
One of the quarterbacks you mentioned, Alan. Now I wouldn't put a high percentage on this guy just because I think he played so well with the team he was with this year. They'll just sign him back. I would love Baker Mayfield. Love him. For whatever reason, I was always a fan of his. Even whenever he was in Cleveland. Like some of the commercials might have been a little bit cheesy, but I don't know. I kind of like the chip on the shoulder that he always had. I liked his attitude. Like not always the biggest guy, you know, he would make his mistakes. He had his limits, but I don't know. I've just always been a fan of his.
Yeah, definitely a different build for a quarterback too at that stature. But I do want to say also Liam Cohen being the OC, I feel like it's kind of a done deal. I think that was done to keep Baker in Tampa Bay, getting him that LA connection. Sure. But the one thing that Donny did say there within that that I like going back to the Fields thing was I do think the Steelers should be exploring all options. Now, if they still do that, but come back to a room of Kenny Pickett, Ryan Tannehill, mid-round draft pick, then so be it, whatever. But I do think that everything should be on the table. I think that like this Fields thing, the discourse and conversation surrounding it has really opened my eyes to like the difference in what I think the organization and how I think they're going to approach it, as opposed to how I feel like the fan base would approach it. Like the fan base is always going to be about taking that big swing. But if you like get behind the lens of the organization, you realize, okay, this probably isn't the path that they're realistically going to take. Like it's a fun conversation to have, but like within the realm of possibility, I wouldn't put it very probable.
I think it's really funny that Steelers fans love to like point and laugh at the Browns. And if you let most Steelers fans run the team, they would run it just like the Browns have run their team, like just with their hair on fire, cut everybody, trade everybody, get a new guy in here. This guy stinks. 92 quarterbacks in 9 years or whatever it was. Like,
that's Madden style.
Yeah, it's exactly what they make fun of, and they watch it not work. And yet, like, it's so. I understand the frustration of watching a team that's not where you want it to be. But I think the thing that has sort of been the Steelers' North Star over 50 years has been patience, being the most patient team in the room. And look, if we're talking about Baker Mayfield, right, this is exactly like I'm not saying that Kenny Pickett is going to become Baker Mayfield, but like this is right when the Browns gave up on Baker Mayfield, made a big swing to go get Deshaun Watson. Now, I'm not saying Justin Fields is anything like Deshaun Watson, but like this is right where the Browns were when they decided this guy's just never going to be good enough. We need a big move. And now it completely blew up in their face. It's not as big of a move. It's not the same situation. But I think the Steelers have decided they're going to be patient with Kenny Pickett. And when you're starting out with saying, okay, we've got one guy on the roster already, and he's kind of an unsure thing, I'm not sure what going and getting another unsure thing does for me. Like if I was getting if I was getting Kirk Cousins, I know what I am getting in Kirk Cousins. That is a sure thing, except for his injury, as long as he's healthy, whatever. Like Justin Fields could be great. He could be awful. I don't know. Same as the guy we already got. If the Steelers didn't have Kenny Pickett under contract, but they had Mason Rudolph under contract, right? Steady guy, pretty low upside. We think he could be okay. I think at that point I could really justify the Justin Fields talk a lot more than trying to put him together with Pickett when it's a lot of, not that they're the same player, but it's just a lot of unknown. You're just putting unknown with unknown. It doesn't seem to make sense the way they've done business and the way they lay things out.
Yeah, I think the quarterback room will be similar to what Zach laid out a few minutes ago. And I think it's like a pretty common thought that I know that the Tannehill dots got connected once they hired Arthur Smith, and okay, they'll stick with Pickett. They'll bring in Tannehill, like veteran, back half of his career. He's in his mid to late 30s. He's accomplished some. He was at his best with Smith, and then probably just a middle round guy. Now, like I had the thought of like Spencer Rattler was always in my head, but then I don't know. He probably had too good of a week last week.
Yeah,
probably fourth round, I think, for Rattler and Jordan Travis. Those two guys are the kind of higher upside guys down there. I think that they could still get. JJ McCarthy's probably going to be, I don't know, maybe first round now. I think that just seems like they're going to the line there. That just seems like that they've kind of decided.
I'm putting my stamp on it right now. He goes no later than 13th overall.
JJ McCarthy. You don't even think he gets the Steelers
that high?
No. Yeah. I think 11, 12, 13. I think there's three teams within there.
As
like
bad as the rest of the quarterbacks looked at the Senior Bowl, I do think there will be a you don't want to be the last guy without a chair, kind of feeling with the GMs that might want a quarterback. So I think JJ McCarthy's stock is definitely up. But yeah, the one thing I wanted to, and I'll let you, but do we talk about this stuff too much? I mean, I know we got this show where we literally created a place to do nothing but talk about the Steelers all off season. But I don't know. I feel some type of way when we spend time talking about stuff that I'm like, that ain't going to happen. I don't know. I think sometimes the right answer is just to say that ain't going to happen and then just move on.
This is the having a conversation out loud version of mock drafts.
Yeah. Right. That's
just for fun. It means absolutely nothing, but it's just for fun.
But
especially when people are doing mock drafts before the season's over, and you don't know where teams are picking.
Or who's in the draft.
I love mock drafts any time of the year.
I get it. I get it. I do not do them until I know where every team is picking at.
I enjoy looking back too occasionally at right after a draft happens, you'll get the way too early draft for the next year. Some of the names, some of the quarterbacks, especially that have popped up in those, like Keaton Slovis was one of them. Spencer Rattler, another one.
I think Phil Dracovic was one of them once upon a time too.
Yeah, that's. I think DeMarvin Leal not long ago was a top 10 pick.
Going into 2022, he was supposed to be definitely a locked first round pick. But I had a friend that I do draft stuff with. His name is Jake Shavank. From 21 to 22, so that same time period that we're talking about with Leal and stuff, his way too early for 2022. Not player team fits, but just players that went. He had 8 right in the top 15. I was like, that is unbelievable.
That's impressive.
Yeah. But I wanted to ask you guys both this, getting back to the Fields thing, how much of it, and again, he hasn't taken that next step as a passer, but how much of the intrigue is just because of the elevated floor, because of what he can provide with his legs?
I think that's a lot of it. I know at least Alan especially, I know you guys probably both, you have a better idea of what Mike Tomlin's thoughts are on him, but he seems like one of those players. We remember the comment he made to who was it, Chase Young a few years ago. I know Young went higher than what Fields went, but like that's like one of those types of players that Tomlin would say, like, oh man, we're never going to be bad enough to have a guy like you. I feel like he kind of has that thought about Justin Fields, and like, okay, it didn't work out for him in Chicago. They're going to take the next big thing here in April. Maybe he has the thought that he can fix him and he can work with him, but he is electric with his legs. And I don't know, again, like how much stock you guys take into whenever Mike Tomlin brings up quarterback mobility. I think there's one quarterback in the whole league that definitively has better legs, and that's Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, I think this is a great example to show the people that think like Mike Tomlin is the Steelers' like ultimate puppet master and just like calls all the shots on his own. If Mike Tomlin was doing that, like the second round pick would be in an envelope. He'd be in his Jeep driving to Chicago right now to bring Justin Fields back with him. Like that would be the end of it. Like that would be his guy 100%. But, you know, he's going to work within that plan there that I was talking about, this structure and this idea. And that's why he doesn't do stuff like that. But absolutely, Mike Tomlin would love to have Justin Fields or a guy like Justin Fields. Said the same things about Jalen Hurts, if you remember, and a very similar kind of player, right? And Jalen Hurts has said that he expected the Steelers to draft him because of the level of interest that they showed in him. And so, yeah, I absolutely think Mike Tomlin would love to go get Justin Fields. I'm just not sure that the overall organizational plan is lined up for trading like day 1 and day 2 draft picks this year with half an offensive line built and the classes that are out there and sort of some kind of commitment to giving Kenny Pickett one more shot.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. We've talked about, the fit for him and Arthur Smith's offense. Like, does it make more or less sense to bring in a Justin Fields right now? And Donnie, I want to get your take on Arthur Smith's offense, not specifically for the quarterback position, but just in general. What did you make of the hiring? Is this a good thing or a bad thing? And like, who do you think are the big beneficiaries for an Arthur Smith offense from the roster right now?
Initially, I wasn't excited. I've gotten a little bit warmer to the idea. Like, I kind of joked like it'll be just similar to like what we saw. But I mean, I think I'm one of the people that was just so damaged by what we've seen from the offensive coordinator role the last, 5 years. But there's no denying that Arthur Smith actually has a resume, and the last 2 guys did not. The 2 guys ago was just good buddies with the quarterback, and the last guy had no, like, higher marks than what he was able to do a couple of seasons in college, one of them being at Pitt, which I'm sure absolutely helped things out. He also had the Maryland and Boston College tie-in, but I think Smith, he does well what the Steelers already tried to do well, which will certainly be good for the organization and the fans, because everybody thinks of the Steelers run game. The owner talks about it all the time. It gets preached about all the time. He does seem to specialize on that side of things, which I think is good. Now in Tennessee, people can say, well, he had Derrick Henry. That made it easy. I'm sure it did, but Henry still had, I might be wrong on a couple of outlier years, but I think some of his absolute best years were under Smith. We know that
the only 2 seasons that he's had over 5 yards a carry were the 2 years he was the OC.
Yeah, and he had the 2,000-yard season in one of those. Tannehill's 2 best years, 2 most efficient years were under Smith. He had the 55 touchdowns and 13 picks or whatever it was. So I do think it'll absolutely be an upgrade. And when it comes to guys that benefit from it, I think that Najee Harris and Jalen Warren are the top 2 for me. I hope that Kenny Pickett is a guy not far behind. But then I also think of like the guys at tight end too. Freiermuth, like I don't know what we'll ever get from Darnell Washington. I'm a little bit worried about the guy, but also excited. And Connor Hayward could become a pretty big X factor. Like he's already, to me, like he should be used like a Swiss Army knife type because of his size and his skill set. Like he's undersized for a tight end, but can kind of be a fullback, H-back tight end, like whatever you want him to be. I think he could be someone that benefits a lot from this.
Donnie, we talked a lot about what that day like was for me. It was in the middle of covering the Senior Bowl. They hired Arthur Smith, had to go write that, then finish covering Senior Bowl practice, then jump back here to do the podcast. What was that day like for you? I can imagine the phone line board there in the booth at the Fan, just like starting to smoke and hiss as the vitriol from the fan base came in from that move. What was that like?
Yeah, that was one of those days. Like anytime. You get like a coach hire like that, which we don't get to see often here. So that's a little bit different. The other days I can really compare it to one that I think of whenever they made the Chase Claypool trade, a season and a half ago. That was another one where we kind of just like let everything go, like right off the bat. The guys opened things up. Like first segment was pretty much just opening comments, and then it was, all right, like floodgates are open, and it was just calls for the next, however long, like pretty much until they run out. And on a day like that, it really didn't. Like it pretty much carried the duration of the show with us just throwing in like little nuggets here and there. But yeah, I mean, it's always exciting in this field, really, no matter what, like whether you personally like whatever move that gets made. If it's something notable like this, then it's exciting, like a bit of an adrenaline rush. I don't know if you guys like experience that too, but it's like, okay, like everybody's going to want to talk about this, and it's just constant for the next several hours.
What are those?
Donnie, how did we, I just want to ask how we got here, because obviously, like, as somebody that grows up being a Pittsburgh sports fan, you obviously think like maybe this is something you want to do. When did you know that was something you wanted to do, and what drove you to get into the position that you're in?
So I mean, you want me to go like way back to
we're talking
childhood
like,
here?
At least, okay, if you want to go that far back, but like at least when the decision was made what you wanted to go to college for. But if you want to go back to childhood.
So, I mean, that is kind of when it started. I mean, okay. I know that kids growing up, like they'll pick out like, oh, I want to be a pro football player. I want to be a cop. I want to be a fireman. I want to be a teacher or whatever. I got my inspiration from watching NFL primetime, like in its heyday. Well, I guess I can't say heyday because I wasn't like around for it in the early 90s, but at least in my heyday, it was still like must watch for me as a kid. Like you get the whole slate of 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. NFL games. That's whenever Sunday Night Football was on ESPN. So you would automatically just tune into ESPN for prime time. It's Berman, it's Tom Jackson. Like Berman's giving all of his little sayings. Eric sleeping with Bieniemy, Joseph live and let it die. Like he's getting into all of them. And I remember watching that like week by week, hearing Berman and just thinking like, man, that would be like the coolest job ever. Like this guy just gets to talk about football and like he's got like highlights of every single game. Now, not that I had to go into exactly that, but that mixed with like once I got into high school and coming to the realization like, okay, I'm not myself. I myself am not going to be an NFL player or a CFL player or any of the other leagues you want to throw out there. Like I'm an undersized kid that plays offensive line. I'd have to be like the best athlete to play in the trenches to go anywhere big and get anywhere big with it. So like I had that passion from a young age. Like, and then I took the journalism classes in high school. I took the TV news classes in high school. Had a journalism, my journalism teacher in high school, Mr. Lindsay, shout out to him at Greensburg Salem. He's the one that first told me about Waynesburg's program, like what they had within communications, and like how he knew like a couple of students that had gone there and like what a high level it was. Lanny was there for a couple of years at that point, Lanny Fratteri. And that's kind of how all that came to be. So then like have a phone call with Lanny. I go visit. I did play. I was on the football team there my freshman year.
I think I've seen a picture on that. Is it random college athletes Twitter account?
Yes, mostly just played JV, but I was on the last team there to ever beat W&J, and that could also hold up to be the last team ever for all we know. Then, went through the sports broadcasting program, met some of my best friends still to this day, that they get monikered the Nasty Boys. If you ever hear that name get thrown out there, and got into this afterwards. I worked for a couple of years in West Virginia. I did some minor league baseball and worked at a radio station there. Then pandemic came around, started part-time at the Fan, kind of had to work my way through things. Like I worked multiple odd jobs, worked at Amazon in the warehouse. I drove for Amazon, which I would not recommend either. If anybody ever
noted
questions if they should work for them. Then my now boss, Craig, one of his kids got sick one week in the summer. And since it was around the pandemic, it was protocol that, he had to stay home. He reached out to me, asked me if I wanted to fill in for him for a week, work with the guys. I had never gotten to do that before. And I was nervous because I had worked with Paul Zeiss in the evenings and the late shows, and I'd worked with people on the weekends. I had never worked with Pony or Chris, so that was going to be new to me. I knew them, to see them in the building. We would chit chat and BS every now and then, but I knew big time show, afternoon drive show. I'm always nervous anyway. I was extra nervous the first week I was doing that, but we hit things off. There were a lot of guys that filled in for Craig, his few years that he was their producer. And I guess that it just never really clicked for anyone else for one reason or another. And for me, it did. After that week, they specifically told Craig, we want this guy anytime you can't do it. And then a couple of things happened above me. Craig gets a promotion, and the rest is history there. So hopefully not too long-winded on that, but that's how I got into the chair 2 to 6 every weekday.
When you were thinking, okay, I'm going to go to Waynesburg and I'm going to go to journalism, did you have in your mind someday this is going to lead to me touring bars around the region sampling chicken wings, or doing a
Paradise Pub shout out
hamburger eating challenge? How did you embrace the irreverence of what you have to do in the industry?
So it was a little bit different. I definitely come out of my shell more whenever I'm with those guys. It's something I kind of had to learn on the go with them, because the funny thing about being in this field is that I was always shy, always nervous. I still don't like public speaking. And I tried to explain to people how what we do is different from public speaking. I'm on the radio. People can't really see me. I don't feel like I'm talking to as many people as we may be talking to. But you put me in front of a group or a class, whatever, I get the typical, I get sweaty, whatever, get nervous. Not that I flub over my words the whole time through. I end up being fine, but it's funny that I grew up as such a quiet, shy kid. I had teachers tell me you're going to struggle with this if you if you don't break out of it. You want to be if you want to be in the news of some way, shape, or form, or in the media, you have to get out of it. But with those guys, it was kind of, I don't want to say forced. I feel like that's a negative word. But I had to break that shell, which I'm glad I did. because I was able to do like funny things, like the Andrew Whitworth challenge with all the double stacks. The wing thing is like a whole other story, how that came to be, that I could tell as we keep going here. But yeah, like it was a little shift for me, but I'm glad that I was like able to do it, and I tried to do it in stride.
The definitely the last thing that I wanted to ask, at least, Alan, was what's the coolest moment that you've had so far since joining on with 93? Is there like a conversation that you've gotten to have with somebody, or just an experience that you've had? Maybe we've already touched on it, but what's the one thing right now that you would say is like the coolest experience that you would, if you could tell child Donny football that you got to experience that, they'd just be smiling from ear to ear?
I'm trying to think of some of the like bigger guests that we've had on. I know that the Pony's not there this week, but the last 2 years he had actually gone out to the Super Bowl, like with his FanDuel relationship. So like he had been able to get like some big guests, just being out on Radio Row. I do think it's like funny sometimes, like if I'm going through my contacts to like actually look for somebody, and just like seeing some of the names I have in there, thinking like, I have no business having this person's phone number. Like I would have never thought I had this person's phone number. One of the guys that I didn't get to like call or contact all that often, because I was only, I think, 3 or 4 months into the job full time. But before Mike Florio moved into that spot, the guys had John Clayton on every single week. He was, I mean, that's someone kind of like Berman in the same vein. Like I watched this guy on Sports Center like every day as a kid. And then like all of a sudden I have this guy's phone number. All of a sudden I'm calling this guy every single Wednesday at 3:00 or 3:30, whatever it was. So just kind of like the moments like that, like talking to people, even if it's very quick, like hey, how's everything going? Like, the guys will be back in a minute or two here. Like just pleasantries. It's pretty neat. Like some of the people I never thought I would encounter.
Deeply offended that me calling Paul at 10:15 p.m. to talk about Pitt football did not make that list. I can't believe it. Donny, I've seen the ratings and they're good, and I've seen the accolades from people like Barrett Sports Media. I know people like your show, but when I go on social media, I see a lot of dislike directed at your co-hosts. What is something that people don't know about those guys that maybe doesn't make it onto the airwaves or onto social media that you think people should know?
So something that always seems to surprise the populace out there, that like they experience Pony and Chris on Twitter. They listen to them on the radio. They make whatever opinion. Normally, like you said, it's a negative one. But I always tell people like how awesome of guys they are, like how well they treat me. They're basically like two big brother figures that I never had. They've been like nothing but great to me. They've backed me like every step of the way while at the Fan, like sort of anything. I mean, not that there's ever been like troublesome situations, but like two guys that I know that always have my back. And then it is always kind of funny whenever people, like if I'm with those guys and we're out at, I don't know, Mike's Beer Bar, or we went to the March Madness games in Pittsburgh a couple of years ago, or we're at a Pirate game, and people talk to those guys for 5, 10, 15 minutes. And then their takeaway is like, man, like, I thought you were a total jackass based on Twitter, but like, you're like a really cool guy. Like that's normally the takeaway whenever they talk to those two. Like they really are great dudes, which I know that like, they're not worried about what the people on Twitter think. I mean, Pony's pretty much a monk on Twitter. Like I've never seen anybody have better discipline than that guy. on social media. Like he puts something out there. I think Chris has always described it the best. Whenever Pony really puts something out there to get people going, it's basically the image in your mind of a kid walking up to like a pile of sticks or a pile of wood, lights the match, throws it in the pile, walks away, and has zero concern about what's going on. Or like the meme with the little girl when the house is on fire and just kind of turned like with the little smirk on her face.
I was thinking of the Joker walking away from the hospital.
Yeah, that's another good one.
Yeah, I think so. Alan, anything else?
No, I think that's it, man.
It's been a lot of fun. I'm not trying to be, I try to be impartial here, but I don't know, Alan. This might be my favorite one so far.
It's been pretty good.
You don't got to be nice just because I'm sitting here.
Don't let Derek or
Nick
he
says that about everybody. Don't listen to him.
I can guarantee I have not said that about Derek or Nick being on here.
You might have to give Nick a hard time for me the next time you talk to him because he fell asleep on me last Sunday.
Yeah.
I tried.
What are you supposed to be on?
Yeah, I booked him for like 8:25. I knew he was out at the Senior Bowl or maybe just coming back, so I was a little bit worried. And I shot him a text like Sunday morning. I didn't hear from him. I'm like, uh-oh. And then get a text back around 9 a.m. Like he had an expletive or two thrown in there. And he's like, I fell asleep, man. I'm so sorry. Or I just woke up. I'm so sorry. And I was like, no worries, pal. I'll have you back on.
I didn't stand Kale up. I just want you to know that I made my appearance that day. So, it's not
there
all
we go.
Not all of us.
There we go. Donnie, we can't thank you enough for riding shotgun on this episode with us, pal. Why don't you tell the people where they can find you?
So on Twitter, at Don Ched 54, DONCHED 54. Instagram, if you want to look on there, that's Don 54 Ched. Because my last name is Chedrick. It's not actually football. There have been people to ask that before, which is kind of unbelievable to think somebody's actual last name is football.
You should tell them, but it's just one L. You just add the second L.
Yeah, that would really throw them off.
Yeah, it's French. Yeah.
Then also, just listen to 93.7 The Fan from 2 to 6, at least 2 to 6.
Where else you find them.
Monday through Friday, if not all day, every day.
Yeah, absolutely. Alan, I think the people know by now, but go ahead and tell them where they can find you.
Saunders _PGH. We got to tell the new people that the thousands and thousands of people that are going to be coming here to hear the Mr. No, not Mr. Donny Football, but not Mr. Football. That's his father. Saunders _PGH on Twitter, Instagram, wherever. PGA Steelers Now, sites account, SteelersNow.com. Got 1,000 stories up there, including a lot of stuff about Justin Fields, like we talked about. And wrote a really interesting draft profile on a guy I guarantee you've never heard of named Ryan Flournoy from Southeast Missouri State. That's one of the schools that Mark Robinson went to, and I think he's an interesting guy, so go check it out.
You were correct. I've never heard of that player. But
or that school,
read that now. Or that school. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. I am Zachary Smith, PGH. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell here. Hit us in the comments with any questions for the next episode. Any thoughts about what we talked about today? Your thoughts on Donnie's journey. We always get comments when DB's on about how much they love DB. Let's get some love for Donnie in the comments.
That guy does do a good job.
There you go. See? You're even getting
everybody
it now
loves
from
Donnie. Everybody loves Derek. Everybody loves Derek. Just everybody loves him.
Leave us a 5-star review like Donnie just did for Derek Bell if you're listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts from. Again, Donnie, we can't thank you enough for jumping in, joining us, riding shotgun. Alan Saunders, Donny Chedrick, Zachary Smith. Till next time, thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.